name is Florence Anyango Ogonjo, a research fellow at the Center for Intellectual Property and Information Technology at Strathmore University under the AI Policy Center. This brief explainer video discusses AI in Africa for Africa and how AI is currently perceived, its track in terms of regulation, its track in terms of utilization, and its track in terms of policy implementation. So in looking at AI in Africa for Africa, we canvass different regions, different countries within the African continent that are already leveraging artificial intelligence and the extent to which they're leveraging it in different sectors. So what do we know about AI in Africa for Africa, and why do we call it AI in Africa for Africa? So AI in Africa for Africa can generally be described as AI built within the African continent for the African people. In this way, we sort of contextualize it in a manner that enables us to view artificial intelligence, and not just artificial intelligence, but other technologies within the African context, in as much as most of the technology is incorporated from the Western area. So looking at AI in Africa specifically, we look at it in terms of mapping. So to what extent has AI been used and utilized? From the mapping, we note 3 specific sectors in which AI is being leveraged in Africa. We note education, however, we also have government or governance trailing behind in leveraging artificial intelligence. From this, we can see that different and diverse areas in which artificial intelligence is already being leveraged within the continent. Following research and mapping that's been done by the Center for Intellectual Property, we note that this mapping sort of shows an interesting dynamic and nuance through ways in which artificial intelligence is being leveraged in Africa. So the mapping done by the Center for Intellectual Property and Information Technology, CIPIT, shows us a dynamic heat map through areas in which artificial intelligence can be used or is progressively being used. With this, we also note elements of investment of artificial intelligence in Africa deriving from research and innovation and research and development, which are core areas in which AI needs to be concentrated so as to enable us look at dynamics through which the African continent can leverage artificial intelligence. In this, we also note that AI is viewed from the perspective of a problem-solving tool within the African continent, in that it is meant to solve different problems that occur in Africa and become a problem-solving tool. We have the sector of agriculture, for example, whereby artificial intelligence is already being leveraged in terms of detecting plant disease and even prediction of weather patterns, which has enabled farmers to sort of track the production of food or harvest within the specific farms. Holistically, looking at AI in Africa also involves looking at it from the context of governance. In this context, we look at how is it possible to regulate AI within Africa, seeing that it is constantly and continuously growing, which we have seen for the past 10 years. Within that period, we've also noted that there are elements of ethics that come up, and there are elements that need to be tackled and can only be tackled from a policy perspective or a governance perspective, if you look at it from that context. Hence why we discuss artificial intelligence within the context of responsible AI and ethical artificial intelligence. With this, we further note that in as much as AI has been growing over the past 10 years within the African continent, or it could be longer, and the development of it has been noted growing within different countries, particularly within the South African region. We also note it within Egypt. We also note it growing diversely within West Africa, and within the East African region, we note that countries like Rwanda and Kenya are slowly growing into tech hubs that leverage artificial intelligence. In as much as we've had this, we've had multiple limitations with respect to the governance of AI or the regulation of artificial intelligence. So the regulation of artificial intelligence runs concurrently with elements of innovation. To be able to adequately regulate AI to an extent, there needs to be an understanding of what AI offers to the table and the ways in which it can be leveraged. On the other hand, regulation should not be so stiff so as to stifle innovation of artificial intelligence, as it is still growing. And in as much as it is leveraged within the global north in different elements and aspects, the ways in which it would be leveraged in Africa might also change, simply because the geographical dynamics of Africa, our problems, our culture, our societal values, as well as governance structures would enable AI to be leveraged in a different manner and have different contexts. We note there's been a rush, or rather a growth, in in the regulation of artificial intelligence, especially in the African continent, noting the multiple national AI strategies that are coming up, mapping ways in which different countries want to regulate AI or want to leverage AI. We note that Mauritius was one of the first countries to have a national AI strategy, followed closely by Egypt, and now we are seeing countries like Senegal come up with national AI strategies. We are seeing Benin come up with national AI strategies. We also have South Africa, as well as Nigeria coming up with national AI strategies. Ethiopia also notes a draft in national AI strategy, mapping out specific elements and areas in which it can leverage AI and the extent to which the ethics and responsible AI elements can come out. We also note very closely that Rwanda also has one of the most dynamic national AI strategies to the African continent, noting specifically within its strategy the need to develop responsible AI department within its general governance structures. Noting all these elements that go into the growth of artificial intelligence in Africa, there is also a note that there is a requirement for localized AI. This simply means that AI developers from the continent and from specific African nations need to be boosted up or upskilled in such a way that they can be able to leverage the elements of technology that we already have, leverage the kind of data we already have, leverage the kind of data sets that can come up within the African continent to create systems or structures that can be able to solve different African problems, either from the education sector, from the finance sector, from the health sector, from government sector, and from other diverse sectors. Could be construction, could be architecture, from all those diverse sectors. With everything in mind, from research and innovation, from policy, from mapping on leveraging, we go back to grounding ourselves on what artificial intelligence in Africa is and defining African AI. So once again, AI in Africa is generally just looking at AI developed in Africa for Africans to solve African solutions. And with that, we ground ourselves in the notion that more needs to be done in terms of research and development, in terms of investment grounded within the African continent through different stakeholders. It could be government, private sector, stakeholders in academia, in sort of building the robust nature in which artificial intelligence is growing within Africa, and to be able to support it for solutions built specifically for the African continent.